I'm, first of all, GDG Sofia organizer and one of the organizers of the event. I'm a professional in the field for more than 10 years now. I'm a backend developer. I'm also Android developer. I've been a DevOps manager. I've written a couple of test automation frameworks throughout the years. And I'm a CEO of Qualifast Ltd nowadays. So I have quite diverse experience, actually, and I hope it's going to help me doing and sharing my knowledge here. Next one. So DevOps is nothing quite defined yet. So different notions, different understandings. It's a vague thing. Sometimes it's referred to as methodology, sometimes it's a movement, sometimes it's a concept. And it deals with many, many different things. But most of people agree that there are some practices, some processes, some tools around DevOps. Very often automation is involved, but it's also integration, collaboration, communication, and stuff. So from my perspective, and what I'm going to be speaking of, and what I'm going to cover, DevOps is going to be everything that happens in a software delivery that's not part of the coding itself, but actually facilitating the process of creation of a new software project. And this aligns with some of the definitions that you can find online. So several claims for the DevOps. It's increasing the efficiency, and it's increasing your quality. It's increasing the throughput your team can be doing for a particular amount of time. And so it's so good that there is a question. DevOps is promised to be a guaranteed win, and why wouldn't you do that? Actually, obviously, everybody wants to be better in what they do. The only thing is that you need to be knowledgeable enough in order to be able to employ all these notions and to get better. And that's one of the basic aims of my presentation. It's not going to be a deep dive. It's going to be rather a horizontal touching of the different areas and the different tools out there that can help you do the different things in the mobile world. So that then you'll be able to apply it to your everyday work if you're in the mobile development, for example. So this is taken from, combined from several sources, different definitions of DevOps once again, but there are several ways of action of DevOps that are usually considered. Is the planning, then the development. Okay, sorry. I was not expecting this kind of one, never mind. So it's the planning, the development, then the testing, then the delivery, then the feedback, and the growth. So these are different processes that are happening around you developing a software project. And all of them have different DevOps-affiliated tools or practices that help you being better in those. And throughout the presentation today, we'll be focusing on the first six, the latter six rather, from development to growth when we're speaking of mobile. And then actually something that's very often omitted when people are speaking of DevOps, and covered only in a couple of resources, is that DevOps actually can also help you with doing organizational improvement overall. This is thing I so rigidly believe in that I founded my company with the very vision on improving on that. And I think it's worthwhile focusing on. It's not going to be covered in this presentation, but really start considering your optimizations not only in the context of a particular project, rather in the context of your entire operations. And it makes sense from my side. For sure. So, yeah, DevOps landscape. It's very diverse, a little bit confusing. There are so many tools, and actually, I stole this image from the Blaze Matter forum. It's not even recent. It's not that it's listing all the tools, but you can see already that there are quite many over there. And actually, if you take a closer look into here, you'll notice that there are not too many tools that are affiliated to mobile development. They're largely targeted to web development or even desktop development. And that's something that I would like to enrich during this presentation, adding some more that you can contribute now to the mobile world. So mobile platforms, as I told you, I've been doing Android development for several years now. Android development in particular is something that I'm very interested in. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of what do I understand as specifics that are separating the mobile development from the other types of development I've seen. Oops, sorry. It was a double click, my mistake. So mobile platforms are now all over. They're so common that everybody is initially focusing on them. We have some statistics, so I'm going to read it. We have more than 200 billion devices, downloads of mobile applications every year. This is for per year. And only this year, the forecast is that more than $100 billion are going to be spent on mobile applications. Like average statistics is that a person is spending about 4.5 hours on 4 hours and 5 minutes on his device every day, and out of them, it's more than 3 hours, almost 3.5 hours that they spend in mobile applications, meaning that it's a large proportion of your lifespan that you're spending your time in mobile applications. So it makes sense that this is a target that's quite enormous, and you can make a good profit, and that's why so many people work in there. But okay, you've made a decision, you'll be operating into the mobile world, doing mobile delivery. The other important thing is to start considering how would you be able to optimize this delivery so that you get to deliver more, and obviously aiming at better profit and better feedback, better quality, and growth. So several things are peculiar about mobile platforms. First, it's the context. We have sandboxed applications. We have the situation of mobile devices is a little bit different than what we are used to considering into the web world. We very often are offline. We have to consider a different kind of interactions that happen when you interact with a smartphone. For example, you're using touch interaction, you're using some scrolling and stuff. Some of those interactions are not common in the mobile world or the desktop world. You also do have the rich environment is in red because it's something quite peculiar about the mobile applications. They have so many sensors in which they can perceive the environment around in so many different additional ways. For example, a sensor that's sensing the magnetic field, the gyroscope, and everything, and this really enriches your context a lot. And we're going to see why this matters a little bit later. And there are also a lot of restrictions that happen when you do mobile development. From the very beginning, the grounds up, all the major mobile platforms. By the way, I forgot to do the disclaimer that today I'll be speaking majorly of Android and iOS. So these are the major platforms when I mentioned them. So both of them are executing in a kind of a sandboxed mode. Also, if you've written a mobile application and it's consuming too many resources, the application managers are going to kill your application, so you have to optimize in that. And also, you have certain restrictions to how you distribute your application. You're going through markets where you're actually going through automatic and also by person review. So there is some quality warranty, but you also have to be abiding to certain set of rules. And obviously, you have to account for the fact that your device can run out of battery and you cannot consume too much of resources. In those slides, I've covered some of the specifics of the mobile world, but we're also going to touch a little bit more throughout the next slides. So now it's going to be a sequence of slides. For each slide or a couple of slides, I'll be speaking of one of the lines of actions of the DevOps and telling you what things actually we already do experience or we can start exploiting so that we get better into doing mobile development. So the first line of action, just to remind you, is the development. And the most obvious thing is that we have IDEs that are supporting us doing the mobile development quite a bit. They have a lot of plugins that are helping us from just contributing something small or visualizing something directly, or to really bootstrapping a whole component with all the concepts that are embedded into the platform. So they're really feature-rich and targeted to the particular platform, Android Studio and Xcode. Yeah, something that I forgot to mention over here, and I'm going to, so I've put the icons of the two platforms in front of every bullet, so that you can see which thing refers to which platforms. And there are very few that are applying to only one of the platforms. So something else is that the dependency management is integral to the technologies for both iOS and Android. And it's important because it allows you to reuse code between the different solutions and also use ready-to-use open-sourced or closed-sourced libraries more easily. So the devices are quite diverse into the mobile world, but something that helps us do our work a lot better and faster are the so-called emulators or simulators. These are software kind of virtual machines that are simulating the operations of a real device and like fasten the development cycles and the feedback loop when you develop quite a bit. And I do consider this also as part of the mobile DevOps, something that's provided for you to get faster feedback of what you're doing. And then it's a newer option for both the iOS and Android world, but now there is the so-called hot swap. If you do a particular kind of changes into your IDE, those changes are going to be reflected into your application without a complete rebuild. And a complete rebuild might take up to maybe a couple of minutes in the more complicated situations, and hot swap would be a lot faster than that. So it's, once again, additional optimizations that they've made so that you're able to get a faster feedback loop. That was the first line of action. The second one is the quality. And the quality would have actually a couple of slides. The first one is the inspection. We have embedded inspection into the IDE itself already. For example, if you write something that's not abiding to the rules, you're immediately going to get an IDE warning. You shouldn't be using this constructor. You should rather be defining your logic into this and this method or something like that. So because in the mobile world, you have dedicated IDEs that are doing the work for both the platforms, people are really able to provide you a lot richer experience and a lot better feedback on what you're doing. So there is also the first one, the IID inspection is static analysis, and there is also dynamic analysis. If you develop your application and you run it, and still, in the development, just clicking through it, sometimes you're getting some feedback of the kind, hey, you shouldn't be using web calls on your main thread, or you should not be holding this resource too much. Sometimes it's immediate crash in Android. Sometimes in iOS world, usually it's just a warning, but still helpful quite a lot to help you pointing out the places where you need to do something to improve. So the first two things, the two kinds of checks are something that are so given to the mobile world that we don't even appreciate them. But if you are in the web or desktop development world, actually you don't get any analysis at all, and many people are doing their work for years and years without doing any kind of analysis. So obviously you can do that, you can embed it in your process, but many people don't, and that's why I already do believe that mobile world, we are one step ahead into the quality of what we deliver. So the third one is that when you release in the market, you're getting a review. It's either automatic, mostly in the Google world, or even review by a real human being, clicking through your application, also looking into your code. Yet again, another warranty of the quality of your application, as compared to when you develop just a random website and host it wherever you want, and it can be as crappy as you like. In both worlds, you cannot do just whatever you like. You have to pass through certain level of a review. Already Elaine shared a little bit about the crappy applications crashing and stuff. That's why it makes sense. They don't want to get bad review of the solutions they've made. And then there is one more thing, also something that we very often use but don't quite realize as part of helping us doing our work. Those are the on-device tools, for example, tools that can be enabled and show you how complex your UI is and where you should be focusing on improving that. Yeah, there are similar things in the web world already. It's part of Chrome, for example, or whatever. But in the mobile world, where very often you're faced with limited resources in your device, it makes even more sense than in the web world to try to optimize your layouts so that they work nicely even on devices with more limited resources. So another aspect of quality that I need to cover is the testing. And testing from the very basic level, from the unit and integrational level, is given by both the platforms of Android and iOS. This is good, so you can do some testing. It's not that many people do, but you have something into the platforms. Then there is also another option. It's the recorded UI tests. They're either provided by XC tests in the case of iOS, or Perfecto, for example, is a paid-for tool that can allow you to do recorded tests for mobile, both Android and iOS. Actually, I don't believe in recorded tests because every time you change anything in your UI, you have to record again. And that's the claim also for the web world. But in the case of the mobile world, you also have like a zillion Android devices. And you cannot just record once, and it would not work for all the devices, all the different resolutions, aspect ratios, and everything. So the recording doesn't make too much sense when you go to the mobile world. It's rather that you have to put your brains in and really identify the items you want to interact if you want this to be transferable to other devices. So there is another kind of testing. Also similar things are available for the other kinds of development. It's the monkey testing. Basically, something goes and clicks through your application in a random way. It's phone monkey, and you also have it as a Firebase test app nowadays. So you can ask Firebase to just be clicking around your application, hoping for something to break. It's not very exhaustive testing either. So the last part is the functional tests, and we have two kinds of tests. Over here you can see that one of them is actually listed only for Android, and it's the instrumented tests. Those are basically tests in which you inject code into your basic code. This code allows the test framework to interact with your application and break through the sandbox of the application itself. And then there are a couple of frameworks that are doing black box testing. For example, IPM, and you can use it for both platforms, although you have to do specifications for both. But I do believe that actually functional testing, black box testing is, overall functional testing actually is very far off from where it should be, especially because those frameworks are not accommodating for one of the major properties of the mobile world, and this is the rich environment around you. Most of testing frameworks actually don't allow you to interact and simulate things that are happening around the device, and many of your applications are affected by that. I had several talks about the functional testing in the mobile world per se, but I can just give you an example. Currently, if you wanted to simulate a sharp descent over a slope or something, the only way we were able to do that was running down the stairs very fast. It's very dangerous. You can break a leg or an arm, or I don't know. And on the other hand, it's not very easily reproducible. So, and this is actually not, you cannot automate that. You cannot put it into your automated tests at the moment because you don't take into account the rich environment you're in. So, now we are switching for the fourth line of action. It's the delivery. And once again, we'll have a couple of slides. The first one would be the distribution. One very peculiar thing about mobile delivery is that if you wanted to do your distribution, you cannot do it immediately. First of all, you're set. You have to go either on one market or the other. OK, you decide to go there, but neither Apple nor Google will process your request in a matter of seconds. Google would probably do that in a couple of hours, and Apple, they can take even a couple of days. So hotfixes in those environments, you might be dreaming of that. Sometimes you may get away with that. For example, if you do it in iOS and then write an email to the CEO of Apple and say, it's very important, it's the most important application of all, please do review it immediately. It can happen in a couple of hours, maybe 5, 6 hours the first time, something like that. It's not going to be immediate though, for sure. Maybe it can happen in an hour, but it's not immediate, definitely. So this is something to be accounted for, and never go into an SLA where you're promising that you're going to, fix a critical issue in 30 seconds. No, you're not going to be able to do that, and you have to account for that. So given this fact, now we're going to speak about the tooling that's supporting you doing the delivery. 2 tools to mention here. One of them is Fabric, which is usually used for distributing the installables for your developers or testers. It can be used for both Android and iOS. Usually TestFlight, the other one, is used for iOS distributions of already production-ready applications. I've placed the Firebase logo here for Fabric, because Fabric got acquired by Google and now is being merged to Firebase. The Fabric delivery itself is promised to be included soon, but is still worked on, so it's not available as part of Firebase. You're still experiencing it from the Fabric perspective. So for user testing, both platforms, both markets provide you with capabilities of doing alpha and beta testing, where you define smaller or bigger chunks of people that are able to interact with your application before the production launch. For beta testing, people can even enroll for that. Then you can also do something important that not many people are using, I believe, is the blue-green deployments or red-black deployments that are the two notions of the same thing in DevOps, meaning that when you have a new version of your application, you don't immediately release it to everyone. You gradually release it to greater and greater quantity of your users, so that if there is a major thing, you don't impact your whole user base, you impact less of users. And both markets, both developer consoles actually allow you to do such thing and do stage rollouts, defining the proportion of your users you would like to experience your new version. And there is another thing, Fastlane, which also allows you to even better integrate the different parts of the delivery, even from building to signing with production keys and even delivering to the markets. Once again, it's part of the Fabric suite, and it's not even yet announced to be merged into Firebase, but I imagine that this is going to happen at a certain moment. That's why I put the Firebase logo in front. So another thing about mobile delivery is how you protect your application. The fact is that you're running on the context of a particular device, of a particular user, and then you're giving him basically everything of you. So your installable will be on his device. He'll be able to extract it, maybe reverse engineer it, and maybe try to do code stealing or try to mimic your application or something else. So actually, you have to protect against 2 things. One is that, for example, if you're sending your application, not everybody is going to be just able to reverse engineer it and use it on another device or set it instead of you. And then you need to also protect your users. For example, if you're doing a bank application, that the user downloaded your application, but then some malicious person just came and tweaked the code, and now he's stealing your bank data and stuff. So first of all, the second one is protected with the app signing. So you have keys that are protecting your application and guaranteeing that nobody else, a third party, would be able to replace the already installed application with an application that he tweaked in any way. Then the important thing about the first one is the obfuscation or symbolication, as it's called in the different platforms. And this means that when you build your code, it passes through some minification, changes of names of classes and variables, also some optimizations over the code that shuffles it quite a bit, and it's not very easy to understand. And then you count on obfuscated code being a little bit harder to understand and also reverse engineer, and you wouldn't be so easily augmented it also. So one other thing that's, I think, applicable mostly for Android, because now iOS devices are a little bit considered to be more protected and a lot harder or not even possible to jailbreak. It's the protection against tampering. If you have a rooted device, the keys are not sufficient to warranty that you are not going to have a problem. Giving you an example, if you have a rooted device, meaning that everybody can execute any sudo command on the Linux core of the Android, then some malicious application can either steal your heap or your memory or access your hard drive space and your persistent data, and then do something bad with you. And there is this safety net is a tool revolving around Google Play Store that will help you find out a couple of things, whether your application has been tampered with in any way, whether it's been installed from Google Play or somewhere else, and stuff. So it's very helpful if you want to really protect your users as much as possible. Continuous delivery. Many people relate DevOps, especially with continuous delivery. The dream of you making a code, pushing a button, and then your change is immediately visible to everyone. As we already covered it, it's not going to happen in Android or iOS because you have to pass through the process of getting approval from the mobile market and then being published for everyone. So continuous delivery overall is not quite possible. One approach to that is the dark launches concept, where you actually deliver a feature, but it's disabled through a flag. And then you decide that you want to now enable this feature for your users. You just switch on the flag remotely, and then you get it delivered to everyone, and they can use it. Well, that's not exactly the way to go either, because mobile users are used to getting a feedback what features are newly introduced to what they're downloading for the new version. And if you just switch a flag later on, this feedback would be broken, and people would be surprised, how come I have this feature and I never actually saw it being delivered to me. So there is also no a single option in which your application will be auto-updating. Nowadays, most of web applications, obviously, but also some desktop applications like your browsers are auto-updating, making sure that you're always running the latest version. In the mobile world, you're not allowed to do that. You cannot just push somewhere and instantly update the applications of all your users. They have to take actually an action to update. And in Android, they recently released in-app updates API, which allows you to, rather than defining it as a custom implementation, use the one provided from Google Play, in which you're receiving a window telling you your application is out of date, you have to update in order to be able to continue using it. So I started off doing this presentation because I was quite wondering how come that I have a Facebook application on my mobile, and it's auto-updating. I knew that auto-updating is not possible, and still I have my Facebook application auto-updating. Some of you might have experienced that, some of you might not have experienced that. And actually, the real answer is that you would have experienced that if you are an Android user, Samsung user, and you have Facebook application. Why Samsung user? Because Samsung have tweaked their own core in a way that it's bypassing the Android restrictions, and only Facebook application can auto-update on its devices. But it's not part of Android system, and it's not supposed to be allowed by the security. And it's just workaround for Samsung. Sadly, now you're not that protected. Obviously, Facebook is more important to Samsung than your security. Cool. So yeah, the answer here. And another thing about the continuous delivery is that there is one more friction here, that the people have to click a button in order to install your application. And actually, you have a quite significant user dropout on this particular step also. And that's why Google introduced instant apps for Android. Those are basically smaller bundles of applications that are immediately downloaded on your device and you can interact with immediately after you hit a link. And you don't get the installation friction. These are basically meant to give you a little bit of experience of the application in a smaller bundle, and then when the people actually perceives what he's going to get out of the application, he clicks another button and he downloads the entire application. So feedback. It's very important that when you release your application, you just don't go to the holiday, rather start considering what's happening with your application and try to improve it. Because the first time you release it, obviously it's not going to fit your user needs at all. The thing is that here you're releasing to like other platforms, other devices that you don't have immediate access to. So you need to be somehow able to realize what's going on those devices and where you should be focusing on improving. So the first thing given is that every market is actually measuring the number of downloads you get. iOS and Android do that, but there's also like some aggregators like App Annie that you can just add your accounts and be able to focus on and follow all your applications. Then, if you want to know a little bit in deeper detail what people are doing in your applications, you're using analytics. And it's either Google Analytics, which is used everywhere, even on the web, or Firebase Analytics, or Furry, or whatever. But like, if you release a mobile application without any analytics in it, you're doomed. Why are you doing that? You don't know what people are doing with your application. You don't know where to improve. Why did you do that at all? So crash reporting is something else that every mobile user is, mobile developer is doing actually. If you write code, it's always going to have some problems. And I promise there are going to be some crashes from time to time. If you don't have any crashes, you've not written any code at all. So that's why we always integrate the crash reporting into our mobile applications so that we see when our users experience crashes, what are the reasons for those crashes, and we are able to take actions. So correct that, submit a new review to the market, wait for 4 days, now it's fixed. Nice. So there are two more things into this slide that are still not entirely generally available, but soon they will be, and both of them are coming from Firebase. One of them is Firebase Predictions, which, based on the analytics that you've collected in Firebase Analytics, it's able to tell you something about some segments of your user base. For example, this proportion, 5% of the people are likely to drop off your application, or they're likely to make a purchase in your application in the next 7 days. And you're actually able to even take an action on that, for example, trigger a push notification to those users. And the other one is the performance, also an additional module that you can add into your mobile application, and then you get some feedback on how your app is performing, like how much time it took for a particular screen to load or a particular action to complete. And it's actually automatically injected into at least the screen loads and everything. I'm speaking of it as if I've tried it. It's not generally available. I haven't tried it. But the idea is that you're going to be receiving some feedback on how your app is performing, and you'll be able to improve on some waggy parts of it. The growth. So when you've released and you've sorted out the greatest edges of your application, now you'll be able to focus on how you grow your user base and attract more people and become the master of the world application. So the first thing when we're speaking about growth is to realize that in the mobile world, scalability is not the issue, speaking of the mobile application themselves. Because if you have 1 billion users, you have 1 billion devices running the applications, right? So you're receiving more and more resources for every application. It's important. Maybe the API is a different story, and I'm not covering in this presentation, but scalability is not the issue. So I think also all the mobile developers nowadays use push notifications for interacting with users, maybe retaining or informing them about something that's happening on the device. And that's the push notifications, for example, are one of the most major reasons why people prefer to have native application rather than a web application. And it's actually that important that this is one of the first features that was implemented into the PWAs too. Because that's a major feature of installed application that you're able to have interaction and act on retention and retaining your users. So considering the thing what I told you the last slide, that you're able to have predictions in Firebase, now you're able, based on those predictions, to take actions. So, for example, if people are likely to drop out of your application, you can make a discount or maybe involve them in some other way so that you try to retain them. Two other things very important about the growth is that you start exploring your user base and try to tune your idea, which was definitely not perfectly fit to actual user needs, to the actual user needs. And very often in the development world, we do that through A/B testing, trying to have this one solution and then the other alternative and see which one has better traction with your users. So in order to achieve that, in the mobile world, you can use Firebase remote configs, meaning that you change some property of your application, and then, for example, change the color of a button. A stupid example that everybody uses. It can be something more complicated too, for example, different user flow or whatever. But the thing is that you're able to experiment and then collect the data through Firebase Analytics or Google Analytics and be able, analyzing this data to figure out what should you do. And then there's one more thing. You can have feature flags helping you with doing the A/B testing, changing something in the navigation or whatever. Once again, it's implemented through Firebase remote config. So, quite a lot we've seen this logo throughout the slides. It's Firebase. I do believe, I'm not a person from Google, but I do believe that Google are actually aiming into turning Firebase as a platform, supplementing your development as all the development tools, DevOps tools that you might be needing as a mobile developer. And actually, you can even see that from the perspective that I think that Firebase is now more focused on mobile development than it used to be, for example, 1 year ago. And there are some things that didn't have the Firebase logo yet into what I presented, and maybe some more are going to be onboarded here. Another consideration is, are you supposed to have a particular person with the position of a mobile DevOps? No, I don't think so. These are so closely interlinked with the ordinary work of a developer or tester or whatever, that I don't believe that in any time in the future there will be a person employed in a company and doing only mobile DevOps, because I don't believe that there will be that much of a distance between the different operations that you do while you develop an application. Mobile applications, from my perspective, are meant to be faster in feedback and also easier to get to, something displayable to the user. And introducing yet another step, introducing a new function, is actually going to be worse for your team rather than something good. So to reiterate once again on the DevOps, it increases your efficiency, increases your quality, your reusability. All your user satisfaction is also supposed to be growing because you're now focusing on what's actually happening in your application. So it's a guaranteed win, and if you know what tools to employ, you actually should be getting better results. Now I've listed some of them. Hopefully some of them you didn't know and are going to help you with the work you do in the mobile development the next time. So thank you, and it's time for the Q&A, and I'm going to take 2 actions together. Thanks, but I also have to administer it. Okay, as a God-level mobile developer, what's your opinion on native script? What's the meaning of the abbreviation God here? So I don't like speaking of hybrid solutions, because I do believe that they have certain drawbacks that are always going to hold them back from native application development. So from the perspective of today's presentation, native script and all the things that I described, native script is as easily integrating with all that like any native platform itself. So I consider that this is only the part that I have to cover in the answer today. Oops, I archived something wrongly. Sorry. Oh, no, it's the same question several times. Can I get it more and more? Oh, no, it's not the same. So as a God-level mobile developer, thank you. Going down, what do you use for performance and micro-benchmark tests? So you can actually use some features of the IDEs themselves while you develop, especially on the emulator or simulator. And when you're releasing out in the public, you can define, and I've done it very rarely actually, you can define some timestamp-based variables that you calculate based on the clock ticks on the device, and then propagate it through some analytics, getting the data and be able to analyze it. Usually when I actually do the development, we don't do that much of performance measuring on other users' devices. It's only on the developers' devices. The God-level mobile developer is already answered, thanks. Also Flutter, React Native, everything is almost the same tool. The same tools are applicable for all of them. This one is done. Where is the CI integration? Actually, the CI integration can go to Fastlane. It can either be just Fastlane or some additional CI server. We're using Jenkins usually. I know that iOS, they used to have Xcode CI. I'm not sure, is it there yet? I prefer to have a central place that can build all the different platforms. So Jenkins is our choice, but it's not imperative to be there. CI is actually nowadays covering many of the lines of actions of DevOps that I listed here. Is going to be from building and to testing, also the inspection part of the quality, and then also doing the delivery. And so whatever CI tool you choose, you actually are going to still be integrating with some of the tools that I listed here. Is Flutter a good platform for a startup company? Stay here for until 7 p.m. and you're going to get some answers from Hiro. And let me also do some additional spoilers. It's not only Hiro. Soon we'll be doing another Flutter event in GDG Sofia, and everybody is invited to come. More details on the closing ceremony. Thanks. And I think this is enough. Huh?